They say all men are created equal.
Shot! Master!
I pull out the Glock.
Full of suffering succotash, son.
One of your nuts is hanging out of your shorts.
Real glass!
You have a father, but your father's dead.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the Too Sweet podcast. As you can clearly tell, it's just me, Lucy, this week. Estelle is not able to make it this week, so you're going to have to bear with me. This week's review is, as usual, of, Dynamite, or the Wednesday evening AEW show. This week it was a very special episode. It was Fyter Fest. So basically they put Collision and Dynamite together because of the Ryder Cup, I believe, taking place this weekend, taking up the slot where Collision would usually be. So they put them together in this 4-hour broadcast. So you're going to have to bear with me because obviously a lot happened. If I forget anything or miss anything, do correct me in the comments or by tweeting me, messaging me, whatever. But I'm going to do my best without Estelle here. Just run through what happened and my thoughts. Before I get into that, I just want to very quickly plug a wrestling show that I'm commentating on this weekend. It's in York and it is True Grit Wrestling. It's always an excellent show, so if you're in that sort of part of the UK, do come along. I really highly recommend. I think if you just search True Grit Wrestling on Google or social media, or you follow me on any social media platforms, you'll be able to find ticket links. So yeah, come along, enjoy some good local graps. But without further ado, let's talk about Fyter Fest, shall we? So yeah, I first and foremost really liked the branding. It was pretty, it was floral, it was really nice. I was wondering, how they were going to approach telling the stories and the structure of this show with an extra 2 hours to do so than a usual Dynamite. And I kind of knew that they weren't doing Collision, but I thought this would be like a continuous show. Blending it all into one 4-hour special event, because that's what they sold it as. Whereas, to be honest, it was a story of 2 parts, which we'll get into. But certainly there was a midpoint where it went from feeling like Dynamite to feeling like Collision, and obviously it was blended. There was some between the two, but there was a clear split. So it was like, okay, so you've got 2 hours, 2 extra hours are you going to tell more stories? Are you going to use that time to further feuds? I'm not going to lie, I don't think they did this. A lot of this was filler, I'm not going to lie. So I guess if people were watching live, they maybe had the benefit of commercial breaks to have a little bit of a breather. Obviously, being in the UK, I watch it afterwards and I watch it all in one big chunk. So I did feel fatigued, and it doesn't have that excitement of a pay-per-view. Pay-per-views would be 4 hours long, but it's match after match that you're really looking forward to that's been built up, obviously, whereas this was completely different to that. So I found this quite difficult, quite fatiguing. I'm not to say that it was bad or I didn't enjoy it. As we'll get into, I really enjoyed certain parts and certain matches were excellent. So it's just an interesting predicament that they've got themselves into. I really did think that they sold it as a big special event, and it felt quite separate between Dynamite and Collision, but that's just my opinion anyway. But we'll get into everything that went down. So to start off, we had Ospreay. He was cutting a promo. He basically, he was reacting to what happened after Dynamite last week, which was him and Swerve. They got into a bit of a tussle. It was shown on Collision. Basically, Swerve being like, you're a fool for trusting Hangman Adam Page, blah, 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 I'll never back him. So Ospreay was responding to that here. He basically said, can they not get on for one bloody night, retrieve the belt, and then they can fight and move on. Yeah, and then Ospreay sort of moved on to say, John Moxley thinks AEW sucks. Well, the only reason AEW sucks is because you're our champ. Which was interesting. I mean, I don't think Ospreay, obviously this wasn't intentional by Ospreay. And maybe not everyone would have picked up on it, but I just think you really shouldn't be saying things like the only reason AEW sucks. Because, one of your biggest stars is saying that the show sucks. That's not really a good thing, is it? I think a better phrasing would have been something like AEW is worse because of Mox. Mox is bringing us down, or something like that. But this required just a little bit of input from someone else. Maybe it was improvised and it just came out wrong. Obviously, like I said, this obviously isn't something that Osprey would have done on purpose, but or like maybe people haven't really thought about it this way, in which case it's fine. But it's just a little thing I picked up on. I just think it's not great to be saying stuff like that. But nonetheless, this was a pretty nice promo from Osprey, as usual. So he's wondering, he's worrying, is Swerve going to be a threat to Moxley losing the championship to Hangman and taking it off him? And he says, Swerve, I love you, but before I'll take a bullet for you, I'll take a bullet for AEW. Next week, it's going to be Swerve versus Osprey 2. So that's a huge thing set out for next week. By the way, next week is also going to be a 4-hour special for the same reasons as this week. So, in this show, there was quite a lot of exposition, shall we say, of not just setting up for next week, but also setting up matches in this show too, because 4 hours to fill is a long time, so they were sort of creating things on the fly. So the next sort of segment that bled into this was an example of that. So Leo Rush and Action Andretti came out, and I was basically just like, oh my god, just get to the point. They was doing a lot of rambling, and I'm really not interested in these two. They've not done enough for me to care. But basically, Rush ended up saying that he thinks Osprey is the worst thing about AEW, setting up a match later. So clearly, a match between two good wrestlers. Obviously, Osprey is excellent. Leo Rush is good. He's a high flyer as well. He's got the speed, so you can sort of tell this is going to be a good match. But I'm not excited about it. I don't feel like I've got any reason to care about Leo Rush. Sorry if there's some big Leo Rush fans in the comment section, but yeah, I just wasn't that bothered by it. I guess it was just nice to see that Osprey was on this card. Next up was Mark Briscoe versus John Moxley. So this was set up because of the tag team match last week. Mark was the one who was knocked out by Moxley's Bulldog Choke. So they had a nice little interview with Mark beforehand, or just like a video, I think, where basically he said that his little 5-year-old son came up to him and said, Daddy, did you quit last week? And he took offence to that. He was like, no, I would never quit. So he said this match it's not about the championship, so it was non-title, and it was just about proving that to his son. Which, you can argue back and forth about whether it's right to have the champion fighting on TV when it's not about the championship, but Mark Briscoe and John Moxley, two of the very best to do it, and I was into this, to be honest. I quite like the reasoning. I just thought, yeah, hell yeah, it makes sense. Briscoe would want a bit of revenge for what happened last week, but he hasn't earned a title shot. Fine. So yeah, this was a really good match, to be honest. These two, they match each other's energy in a sense, don't they? There was a lot of nasty bumps. In particular, the cut-off when Mark Briscoe, he went to jump on Moxley, who was outside the ring, and he moved, and he landed pretty nastily on the floor. That's when Yuta mainly started getting involved, and Marina Shafir distracted the referee while he was doing that. I feel like people maybe complain about the Death Riders getting involved, but that's what they do. They're getting heel heat for doing that. You've got to expect it, really. Mark was busted open. He was bleeding from quite early on. For that reason, I thought it really felt like a fight. It didn't really feel like a wrestling match between these two. I think it just felt like a fight, and I think that's the main strength of both of these two wrestlers. So to see them, to come together in a one-on-one match where they can really amp that up, I really enjoyed it. So Yeah, we all knew, didn't we, that Mark Briscoe wasn't going to win, but he did hit the J Driller on John Moxley, which I loved how they sold on commentary that no one's ever kicked out of it before, but Moxley did. And then so Mark Briscoe after that was going for a move. Can't remember what it was. That again, I thought it was really effective on commentary. They sold he's only ever hit it 8 times in his whole career. He was going for that, but Moxley managed to escape. Um, and then Moxley ended up getting the win with the Bulldog choke. So I liked the fact that the Death Riders helped him throughout this match, but he didn't rely on them and they weren't involved in the finish as far as I can remember. It was a pretty clean finish. So um, Mark Briscoe looked incredibly strong throughout all this. I think we've said it before, how great he is. Taking the pin, you don't really believe he's going to do anything hugely noteworthy, but every match he's in is great and better for him being in it. So I think this was a great addition to the show, and I enjoyed it a lot. I think that the Death Riders are just they're ticking along at the moment. They need to remain appearing very strong for that championship match against Hangman to feel big. They don't want to, obviously, if they look weak going into that, it's going to mean nothing if Hangman wins. It's got to be they are as strong, as dangerous as ever. And I think this did a great job of achieving that. I'm rattling through these. I don't think I'm as good at this as Estelle is. She's 10 times better, but yeah, we'll move on because it's such a stacked long card that at this point, we're what, like 2 segments in, feeling good. It's going really great, and this next tag team match added to that. I think it was Julia Hart and Sky Blue versus Toni Storm and Mina Shirakawa. Meanwhile, Mercedes Moné was meant to be on commentary, but then she ended up just sitting there eating a steak instead. Which, cool. Aura points. Yeah, why not? I mean, why would you work extra hard, go on commentary? Yeah, just sit there and eat a meal. So yeah, we obviously we're further in the story with Toni Storm and Mercedes, but in a non-direct way, which is totally fine because we're giving all these fantastic women some TV time. And ultimately, yeah, this was a really good match. The crowd was really into it from the start, which was great to see. They were in Denver for this show. So Mina took all the heat, but she looked great despite that. She was taking all the hard knocks while Toni Storm was kept out of the match deliberately by the heels. I thought they worked really well as heels. Julia Hart in particular, like just again, I'm gonna use this word again, just aura. But then when Toni got into it, it was fantastic. Her and Mina working really well together as a team. Lots of tandem offense. Obviously a little bit gay as well, threatening to kiss, but they didn't get to kiss. But they did manage to hit like a double, like in tandem German suplexes and hip attacks when Toni eventually got the big hot tag, which was very anticipated. And then, yeah, Toni ended up picking up the win, picking out Sky Blue with a like chicken wing finisher that she does, submission hold, I mean. Meanwhile, Mina had taken out Julia Hart. So, yeah, it was pretty action packed, and I quite liked the simple way that Mercedes was watching from the sidelines. Yeah, it was fast paced, and I thought it worked really well. Um, Unfortunately, it wasn't the only women's match on the card, but it was the only one that really had time to breathe. On a 4-hour show, I was hoping that they could have fit far more, women's competition on the show, but sadly not. We'll get into what else we see, as we get into it, going through this review, but yeah, I feel like it must have been less than half an hour, like maybe even just 20 minutes of women's wrestling on this 4-hour show, which I guess a quarter, and maybe quarter-ish, but it was less than a quarter. If it was a quarter, it would maybe be proportionate, but still, it's not ideal. Nonetheless, I'm not complaining about this match. I thought it was good. And I almost forgot to mention as well, Tony then walked straight up to Mercedes and started chomping on her steak with using her hands. After that, we had a little backstage segment where Ospreay ran into Max, MJF, who was telling him he needs to stay out of Swerve and Hangman's business, basically ridiculing him for everything he's doing at the moment. He said that, that it's just stupid. You should just let them fight, blah, blah, blah. Ospreay then said, Max, you're just saying that because you know you've got no chance of beating Hangman, even on your best day. And then Max said, hey, Ospreay, how's your son doing? Ospreay, as all wrestlers do whenever their child or wife or husband or any family member really is mentioned, went absolute haywire. He saw red. But then the Hurt Syndicate was quickly there to back MJF up. So, I feel like they're just with little sprinkling week on week trying to keep MJF in the title picture, sort of setting up that he's going to face someone for whoever it may be in the future for the World Championship. So then this moved on into the Hurt Syndicate segment. And I just want to say that, I guess that what that segment is telling me is that, they're sort of like bodyguards for him, so Max can chat as much shit as he wants, and he doesn't have to worry about the repercussions, because obviously he's got 3 absolute behemoths behind him. But the fans still like Hurt Syndicate, but dislike Max, so it was really funny. MVP was like pointing to both members of the Hurt Syndicate in turn, and then when he eventually pointed to Max, it just turned to booing. Whereas before it was like raucous cheering. So MVP then sort of went into the same spiel that he was saying last week, which was like, if this is where the best wrestle, then how come no one can step to us? Where's the best team? And he said, the best tag team lives in your imagination. They don't exist because no one can beat us. Which, obviously he's an excellent promo and he did extremely well here, but, he's not saying anything new. MJF then called out Mystico. He said he's going to watch his match, which is going to be next week, and he might face him at Grand Slam Mexico, so we can all see what's going to happen there. I will say that a lot of this show was building for Grand Slam Mexico, as it should. That's in 2 weeks. They did quite a good job of weaving in a lot of Mexican talent into the matches with mainstays from Dynamite, and just making it exciting and building them up as stars, putting across their talent. I think that's exciting. It's interesting though, because I can't imagine Mystico losing to MJF in Mexico, but I don't know, that'll be huge heat for him. But will that be good heat, or will that just be a terrible decision? Not sure, but we don't have to worry about that yet. Maybe the match won't even go ahead, who knows. Rolling my eyes as I say that. So then after that, Speedball Mike Bailey, Kevin Knight, these two apparently got a tag team name called Jet Speed. Pretty cool, actually. And Commander all appear. Basically, they said they want a trios match. But MVP's like, yeah, everyone, do you guys want it? You want to see that match here tonight? Which, whenever a heel does that, why are you cheering in the crowd? Like, you're being set up for failure. People in the crowd are like, hell yeah. It's a heel saying it. They're just going to be like, well, no. Have you not learned by now, wrestling fans? MVP was like, no, well, you don't get it. They haven't earned it. So then, leading into the match that was coming up, which was LFI, Rouge, Beast Morrison, and Jalistico versus the trio I've just mentioned, Speedball, Knight, and Commander. So, this was just crazy non-stop action from the beginning, to be honest. Very fun. I think this was the best example of a tag team match on this card. There was a lot of them. I think this was the best one. I think that, we had three luchadors in this one, and they all were very unique. I think that that's the beauty of why this match worked. And Roosh, of course, Speedball and Kevin Knight being the non-luchadors in this match, but they obviously, their style is similar to the luchador Mexican wrestling in that they really fit in with the high flying. It was quick, very smooth, very like high risk, high reward type of wrestling. But I say a lot of the wrestling on this card was like that. Um, I mean, yeah, but as I said, they put a lot of Mexican wrestlers in, a lot of luchadors to try and build up for Grand Slam Mexico as they should. Um, but I just felt like it just meant that a lot of the matches had the same vibe. Whereas I feel like the strength of Dynamite recently has been that it's been a variety show with a bit of everything mixed in. I don't know, maybe it's just a perception thing and it wasn't the case, but it just felt like a lot of these matches were the same sort of style. And that's not to say these matches weren't really fun. This match was great, but um yeah, sometimes you just need a little bit of variety. That's all I'm saying. Um so anyway, let's get into this match a bit more. I'm digressing. So Commander, towards the end, he like walked the ropes, then launched outside the ring. My mouth was literally agape. That was awesome. And then they ended up picking up the win. So that means that Commander, Speedball, and Kevin Knight get their match against Hurt Syndicate next week. The Hurt Syndicate started beating them down, but they ended up being able to take the Hurt Syndicate down, which was awesome and a bit different to stuff that they've done in the past, really. So what I liked about this was, Hurt Syndicate asked for the best, and they keep on saying, "Well, where's the best?" Because I ain't seen any of the best. Well, they got them in this segment. I think, if you on paper, three sort of fresh talents who have been put over as being fantastic inside the ring. Yeah, it makes sense for them team together and show the Hurt Syndicate what the best can do. So I was quite a fan of this. I just think it, I don't. Well, they're not going to beat the Hurt Syndicate, so I just hope they do that in a good enough way so that they don't look ridiculous. I feel like maybe not a weakness, but just a thing of the Hurt Syndicate as of late. And all their matches have just been close enough to a squash, really. You haven't really believed that their opponents could beat them. Estelle and I have talked about it. So I just don't want this to turn out the same way. Because I think these three need to go far. And, I'm happy for them to be a team, but I don't want it to be at their detriment. So, yeah, we shall see about that. We had a bit more exposition after this, a little backstage segment where Paragon and Danny Garcia were talking, and Adam Cole was like, basically propositioning Danny Garcia, being like, "Hey, you hate the Don Callis family, I hate the Don Callis family. Let's team up." So that was essentially that, and that was going to be the main event. Yes, an Adam Cole match, main eventing. Now, I know there's big Adam Cole fans. If you'd listened to the podcast for a while, you'll understand, but Estelle and I can't just blame it on Estelle, because I was involved too, but in our tier ranking, she was like, Adam Cole is an NPC. What's he doing recently? And to be honest, it's still the same. We filmed that like 2 months ago, and to be fair, I'm not feeling him at the moment. So having that in the main event, interesting to say the least. I don't hate Adam Cole, but I'm not feeling the Paragon, don't understand it, not interested in seeing this in the main event. But okay. I was like, I'll have an open mind. We'll see. We had another backstage segment setting up a match later on in the night. Christian Cage was with the patriarchy, Mother Wayne, Nick Wayne, basically telling Nick Wayne, okay, well, you wrestled in the Super Juniors, you were all right, but you didn't win, so you're kind of a loser. And basically said, well, you probably deserve a rest, but you're a champ. You're going to defend that Ring of Honor TV Championship in a four-way match later on in the evening. Which, yeah, we'll get into that later. So you kind of see where we're heading with this. Just we're getting to the fillery parts. The fillery parts are being set up for later in the night, whereas the big, really exciting match that everyone was really excited to see was next. So that was referring to the Brody King versus Claudio Castagnoli versus Kenny Omega versus Dorado for the championship. Um, so in, clearly this was the Dynamite main event, right? And this was sort of like halfway through the show. After this finished, we were going into essentially a different show, but at the same time, it was all bleeding into one another, because a lot of the matches that were on the second half were set up in the first half. Now, if you just look at this like standalone, maybe this would have been a pretty decent episode of Dynamite on its own, to be fair. I think this probably had the potential to be a pretty decent episode of Dynamite if we just had this match and cut it off. But it continued after that. I do think the second half let it down a bit. But we're not in the second half yet. Let's just focus on this match. It was absolute chaos from the start. Everyone was getting their shit in. Everyone was getting in some brilliant, signature moves. Having won the little tournament that they did for this, I just love this as a concept, and all for the wrestlers from different countries. Like we said last week, it's not the most diverse, but whatever, it's fun. I liked it. I thought they were four valid contenders, but I also thought, as Claudio's my favorite wrestler. I'm wearing my Claudio jumper right now, but Kenny's a level above his opponents. He's just the elite of the elite. You know what I mean? And I love Claudio's my favorite wrestler, yeah, but I'm not stupid. I can't deny Kenny's just a level above. But having said that, like, he had more aura than everyone else. Shit, that's like the fourth time I've used that word this episode. But I can't even remember my train of thought now. But yeah, Kenny had like more aura than everyone else. But at the same time, everyone had a chance to shine and do their unique stuff. Obviously, I'm going to talk about Claudio quite a lot. He was being a shithouse, and I quite enjoy heel Claudio. I think he's really good at it. He's ruining the fun. Whenever things were like, Dorado was going to do a high-flying move, he just moved out of the way. He poked Kenny in the eye to get the upper hand over him. Huge heel move. And then targeted his midsection. As we all know, he had surgery on his bowels, so huge heel move. And also Brody King, looking like an absolute beast, proper powerhouse. Yeah, awesome. And like I mentioned, Dorado getting some high-flying shit in. It was a nice mix of different wrestlers. But like I said, Kenny's just a level above. We actually had Claudio and Kenny working together as a bit of a team. That was really awesome. Loved that. Whether it was on purpose or not, it doesn't matter to me. Just loved it. I thought Claudio was just at his absolute best in this. He was showcasing everything that makes him good. I've already talked about him being a heel. He was showcasing that he's very athletic and he can, for his size, like you wouldn't think that he can move quite agile, be quick, like catch up with a wrestler like Dorado, but this match proven that he did. It was funny in commentary. They were selling that, luchadors are the bane of Claudio's existence, and he has a lot of problems with them. And I liked how this played out in that sort of like a fly he couldn't swat almost. But yeah, he can clearly hang in with these wrestlers, which I love for him. Love seeing him in big matches such as this. I will admit, I thought for some reason that it was going to be a one-on-one match, Kenny versus Claudio. But this was, I feel like that would be awesome, but I can't be selfish. I think this was probably a better match on paper. Um, so yeah, this was just competitive right up until the very end. I absolutely loved it. It was anyone's match for taking, lots of near falls, but in the end, Kenny hit the one-winged angel on Dorada to retain the championship, which I think we all saw coming, but it didn't take away from the enjoyment of the match at all. I loved it. Loved this match. This was by far the best match on the card, in my opinion. I'd be interested if Estelle was here, if she'd agree. I think she'd agree that it was the best, but I do wonder if she'd agree that it was like by far the best. Like, would she? There were some pretty good matches later on too. I wonder if she would think that they were nearly as good. In my opinion, this because it was varied. I think the pacing was very good, and because of the high stakes and the big star power, for me, this took the cake. And like I've said, if this episode just finished here, I probably would have walked away pretty happy. I don't know, I've eaten pretty good so far. It's like, I finished this meal. You've finished your big main, and you're full of pasta or whatever. And then you think, oh, I might have a dessert actually. I'm a bit full, but you know what? I want to treat myself to a dessert because you fancy a cheesecake on the menu. And the cheesecake's just like, it's okay, but it's mid. Like when cheesecake isn't really that nice. It's like you could have made it at home. It's not worth the £8 that they've charged you on the menu. That's kind of what I'm getting to here. Does that metaphor make any sense? Because it's on free TV? I don't know. No, it doesn't make any sense, but I'm sure you all know what I mean. Maybe you completely disagree. I'd be interested to know what people think in the comments about the way this was structured. But basically, what oh God, I'm skipping a whole thing. I'm skipping a whole thing. A very important thing. Um, Okada came out. Okada came out and him and Kenny had a face-off, which is absolutely totally epic. They came to blows. Okada actually got a body shot in on Kenny. Obviously still selling that stomach. But then Kenny escaped the Rainmaker. Okada then escaped the one-winged angel. So awesome. Very heated, very tense. And this was leading up to later in the night. They were going to announce that these two are going to face off at All In, and it's going to be, well, I'm not sure if it's going to be unification, but it is winner takes all between the International and the Continental Championships. So, like I said, don't know if they're going to combine the two belts yet, but you would imagine so. Either way, you love to see it. We are so back. This is absolute banger, huge for the wrestling world as a whole. Awesome. Awesome. Love it. I think Estelle called this months ago this was going to happen. But if it's predictable, it doesn't make it any less awesome. So yeah, can you imagine if Dynamite had ended on that? It would have been awesome. But, circumstances are what they are, and we moved on to the collision section, shall we say. So, listen, I'm not a collision hater, but I'm just saying there was clearly a shift. So the third hour began, and we had a swap in the commentary team. Tony Schiavone and Nigel McGuinness took over from the Dynamite commentary team, which is featuring Ian Riccaboni, which is interesting. He seems to have moved over to Dynamite. He's pretty good. No complaints from me. But yeah, they even like put the collision branding on the comms desk, which I thought was interesting. I don't know why they would do that, really. What's the point? If you want it to be coherent, why have that clear visual distinction? Because the comms desk in this setup was on the hard cam behind the ring, so I think that was an interesting choice, just a little detail. So then next up, as I mentioned earlier, Lio Rush versus Will Ospreay was set up in the first half, and it was kicking off this second half, so kind of like transitioning us over with an Ospreay match to make it feel still like the same show, it's still a big big event, because we've got Ospreay, who's obviously one of the biggest draws ever. I just dropped my phone. Sorry if you heard that. That was a huge bang crash and wallop. Anyway, so this match was like pretty typical of what you'd expect from these two wrestlers. Like I mentioned earlier, just two high flyers, very quick, doing their shit. I, you know, and I enjoyed it, but like I said, it was very high agility, like the other matches that we'd had before, and also what I was expecting to come with the other luchas that were already sort of announced later in the card. So although I enjoyed it, I was a bit like, I've seen this already. Um, I don't know. As a Will Ospreay match, it's always good. But yeah, um, it was fun for Leo Rush to get this. This is a big rub for him. I think he came across pretty strong in this one, but I still don't really feel like the character or the gimmick is going anywhere. Um, Maybe the crew's gonna team up with Ricochet. I feel like that would probably be quite a good fit for them and just something to do. Um, but there's nothing majorly notable for me about Leo Rush. Also, what was with his entrance gear? That was serving. Don't know what it was serving, but it was serving. Um, so yeah, Action Andretti was on the outside trying to help him out. And towards the end, Leo Rush kicked out of Ozcutter. I was very surprised. I was thinking, oh, this match is pretty short as he went in for the pin, but Leo Rush kicked out. So like I mentioned, he looked pretty strong and he's got a pretty strong rub. Um, but as I mentioned, Andretti was trying to help him win. He gave him a chain, but then the ref noticed, stopped him from using it, and then Leo got caught in a Styles clash. So like, yes, it was obviously a clean win. He didn't actually cheat, which I think probably paints him in a better light, leaves him better off than if he had cheated. And it it wasn't well, obviously he was out wrestled, but also it was sort of like he was caught off guard. So I do think that Leo Rush came out of this one looking great. Yeah, it was pretty good match, but it's not one, in my opinion, not one of Ospreay's greats that you're gonna go back and like, oh yeah, I remember that match against Leo Rush. Oh yeah. Um, Anyway, Andretti then went on behind. They um, were attacking Ospreay. And then Hangman appeared to rescue Ospreay, who then got on the microphone. He said he doesn't need anyone's help to win the championship. Not Ospreay or not one of the worst men to ever walk the planet, Swerve Strickland. Um, he said, I will never need nor will I ever accept help from Swerve Strickland. Or will he? I don't know. I think this is leading to the biggest, most satisfying shift, switch ups, sneakies in character history. I think this is going to be a brilliant character arc for both Swerve and Hangman if they can just put their differences aside for one night and just take the championship, for the greater good. I can't remember if I might have skipped over this earlier by accident, but oh no, I didn't. I remember mentioning it now, but I just want to talk a little bit about the Swerve versus Ospreay match. I was a little bit worried that I feel like it's maybe a bit of a long-winded way, isn't it, to set up that match for next week's show. But I was a little worried that maybe that was the match they were going to do it all in, and they were sort of trying to set up for that. We It doesn't need to go that far. This just needs to be a one night thing, and then let Swerve get involved in the championship match. Let them put the differences aside. Let Ospreay be right. Ospreay can be the catalyst for it. He can get his championship match because he's helped Hangman to get it. Swerve gets his championship match, maybe a triple threat. I don't know, but it's exciting. The title picture at the moment is very exciting. Like I said last week, there's so many valid contenders and the biggest stars all contending for that championship. So it makes it seem very important. It puts Jon Moxley in, I think, I know people probably disagree, but in a great position as like this unattainable champ who everyone wants to take down and everyone's having to band together to take him down. So I'm really feeling it at the moment. Hangman said, All in Texas is going to be my night. He says it with absolute passion. And suddenly, Jon Moxley appeared behind him, which I thought was really cool. You didn't see him come to the ring at all. He just sort of, the camera angles just made it seem like he just appeared, which was really exciting. they sort of had a face-off, and then the Death Rider slowly started approaching the ring. So it wasn't like an immediate beatdown. You sort of wonder why wouldn't they just run in and beat him up? Or was it more of a mind games thing? Um, but then Osprey turned up with two steel chairs to sort of keep them away, fend them off. So obviously a big contrast to Hangman saying, I don't need anyone's help. Osprey's coming down and helping him regardless. Osprey's saying, you're having my help whether you want it or not, bitch. Um, which I think works for Osprey's character. He's a bit of a I know we had moments where we thought he was maybe gonna go a bit heelish, but this sort of golden retriever type of person where he's just like, come on guys, let's just get along. He's trying to help everyone as much as he can. And just compared to the other people involved, Swerve and Hangman, he's very chipper, he's very positive, he's a ray of light compared to them, shall we say. Um, but I do just want to say Hangman's hair, the hair theory lives on. It is extra blonde this week and extra curly. So I think, we're going back to OG Hangman hair eventually. When he eventually wins that championship, he's going to look the same as what he did when he first won it. That's my theory anyway. Um, yeah, and then let's move on from that. But that was fun. That was a pretty good way to kick off the second hour. The third hour, sorry, second half. Very confusing. Um, this was fun, and this made it feel a pretty smooth transition. I've enjoyed so far the way that they have bled segments into one another. Someone runs into someone backstage, and then it was their segment before, then it's the person they ran into their segment next, for example. It's worked quite effectively so far. Then we had Don Callis' family and Hechicero backstage. Don Callis basically recruiting Hechicero to the Don Callis family, saying they're going to kick some ass tonight. So that's a pretty cool grouping. But before that, we had another tag team match featuring Luchadors. It was Atlantis Jr. and Templario versus FTR. So we had a video package earlier in the show, explaining the beef, which basically stems from Collision, FTR being like, I don't know if you guys know this, but we're pretty big deals in America. I will say this about this match, this was another really good match, but just felt a little bit samey as the other stuff we had in the show, but I just mean in terms of pacing, basically, in terms of it being, having high speed wrestlers going up against someone who's less high speed, and the Luchadors clashing with main AEW roster mainstays, and just it's not a bad thing, but it's just when you have that same formula over and over again, it can just feel a little bit repetitive. But again, this match was good. This match was really good, actually. So FTR did a brilliant job at putting over the Luchadors that they were facing. They look better than FTR, to be honest, and that's a testament to FTR really being willing to put other guys over, letting them get in a lot of awesome moves. There was a lot of near falls that were definitely three. 100% they were three. But you really, there was a lot of moments where you thought FTR were going to lose. They worked really well as heels in this. I know last week I was a little bit pessimistic about their heel work, but I think that this week it was a lot better. Just with, actually, it wasn't last week, was it? That was at Double or Nothing that I was talking about that. Yeah, so I feel like just without the commentary stuff getting involved, extra background stuff, just in a wrestling match, well, we all know FTR are great at wrestling, and that's where they really shine. So yeah. So my problem, I didn't really like the finish to this. I'm going to be honest though. So Templario was going for a suplex, but then Dax caught his leg. He stood near the ropes, meaning that he sort of fell over, and he had Cash up, but because he was tripped up, Cash landed on top of him, on top of his shoulders for the win. I just felt like after everything that FTR kicked out of in this match, it was a pretty weak finish. I understand gets them over as heels, makes the Atlantis Junior and Templario still look really strong. Um, you know, to an extent, but also like why wouldn't you kick out of that? I don't understand. Not sure if I missed something here. This just wasn't my favorite finish, to be honest. Um, so then Stokely also then cut a promo, which was just not bad, but again, not really saying anything new. Emphasizing that FTR are the winningest. That's such a difficult word. Winningest. Such a weird word as well. Like, it doesn't really make any sense, does it? But it does. You know what it means? Like, it means they've got the highest win rate in AEW tag team history, which is pretty huge. So yeah, but we get the point. We get the point, Stokely. It's not really establishing anything new for them to go on and do in the future, so not sure what if they're gonna have a big feud next. I I don't know. I couldn't tell you after watching this. Um, Dax was gonna speak, but then he was the boos were so loud that he couldn't get a word out. So clearly got a lot of heat, clearly over with live crowds. So decent, decent. This match was good. I liked this match as a wrestling match standalone, but I'm not sure what this added to the show other than being a good wrestling match. We had a lot of good wrestling match that followed this same formula, so unfortunately it didn't stand out to me. Um, so yeah, I talked about what Don Callis said earlier about Hechicero, so it was time for that match. So it was Hechicero, Takeshita, and Fletcher versus the Los Outrunners, which was the Outrunners wearing luchador masks, and Bandido. So yeah, the Callis family, the vibes was just off the charts, looking fantastic. I love how Kyle Fletcher, he's so unapologetically flamboyant. He'll wear his bright pink, totally standing out like a sore thumb, but looking great while doing it. And I thought Hedgesera fit in really well. If he's going to be aligned with them going forward, I don't think we need more members of the Callis family, which we've talked about before, but if I can live with this. I can live with this. He just seemed to slot right in. They were being brutal from the very beginning. For example, powerbomb on the outside, really nasty stuff. Don was being a menace on commentary, just making loads of jokes about the Los Outrunners being like, oh, it translates from Spanish into Los Idiots. That's just one of the things I remember him saying. Just generally being an absolute menace. Very funny. He always is, isn't he? It's very entertaining. Um, but yeah, just like most of the matches on this card, it's great to see, stars getting TV time, Takeshita and Fletcher and Hechicero. And also like great to see the Outrunners and Bandido getting some time as well. But it feels a bit aimless. So like, what's the payoff from this? Do we have any payoff? Not particularly. This was another chaotic tag team match to add to the list of chaotic tag team matches on Fyter Fest. Regardless, Bandido doing his usual awesome shit. He went for a lion salt, but Fletcher caught him with a super kick, which was very accurate, very well timed, very awesome. And then Bandido also reversed like a powerbomb into a Rana, which was really awesome. And just, spots like that, just very entertaining. But eventually the Callis family, Takeshita and Fletcher, they both hit brainbusters on the Outrunners. The Outrunners were doing the handshake, they got broken up, and then, yeah, they hit these brainbusters for the win. Yeah. I feel like a bit of a broken record. I feel like I'm saying the same stuff. But I enjoyed this match, but if this was on Collision, right, and I hadn't watched it, it was just like a normal week. I watched Dynamite and I maybe watched the highlights of Collision on YouTube because I don't have a lot of time, especially on weekends. I probably wouldn't be gutted that I missed this match and it wasn't on Dynamite, you know? that's kind of where I'm at with this and a lot of the matches on this card. Um, I feel like here is where we really started to dip things. Let's say we started here, we went up, and we peaked with the International Championship match. And since then, we're sort of slowly going down. Um, and at this point, it's quite a steep drop, and we're not going back up from now. Is how I feel about it. Perhaps you feel differently, like maybe it's just fatigue setting in. I'm interested to know what Stella thought too, but that's kind of where I'm at with it. Well, I can kind of guess how she might have felt about the next segment, which was Megan Bayne and Penelope Ford. They just dragged Anna Jay's lifeless body out onto the stage. They were beating her up. Um, after everything that had happened with them last week in their match, which was a great match. But Halle Cameron nowhere to be seen. But who was to be seen? Ty Mello. Clap if you care. Anyone? I could not give a shit that she's returned. Sorry. I'm just really not bothered. I'm just really not bothered, and I don't think she got much of a pop either. But she's back. I don't know. I don't know if there is space for her in the women's division because I know I've just been complaining that there wasn't enough women's stuff on this show. By the way, this segment was like 5 minutes at the most. So we've got Megan Bayne recently joined the roster. We've got roster. We've got Telka who's just joined the roster. We've got Tony Storm doing huge things. Mercedes Moné doing huge things. Halle Cameron's breaking out. Um, I'm not sure if we really needed a big comeback, but happy for her to come back and whatever. I'm happy to be proven wrong. But if she doesn't do anything for me, I'm not particularly excited that she's back. Speaking of the women's roster, I mean, should I talk about the elephant in the room now, or should I wait till the end? I mean, normally we do news at the end. I got a feeling that without Estelle, I might forget. So I might as well address it now while it's on my head. Mariah May has officially signed with WWE and she has debuted on NXT this week. So Estelle and I talked about this weeks ago when it was rumoured that this might happen. And we said, if that's what she wants to do, all power to her. I still stand by that. If that's what she wanted and she wants, to be in NXT, that's all power to you, girl. Like, you leverage your star power, and I hope she's getting paid a lot. I've seen rumours that she's getting paid a lot less. It's not all about the money, is it? As long as she's happy, I just hope for her they don't mess this up. I think it's quite strange her going from being such a big star in AEW, one of their biggest draws, women's world champion, to a developmental brand, which I know people will argue about, is it a developmental brand, or oh well, she needs to learn how to wrestle on the best, blah blah blah. But I disagree with that. It's a developmental brand, it just is. So I feel like she should have gone straight to the main roster personally. We'll see how it works out for her. I really hope it works out well. I truly do hope that it works out well for Mariah May. I'm happy for her, like, living her dream and doing really well, making a huge name for herself. She's got a lot of star power. Her name has got a lot of weight behind it now. So she has every right to work for whoever she wants to work for. I might watch some highlights of what she does in NXT out of curiosity and see how it goes. But yeah, the ending between her and Tony was poetic. She came in, had a fucking brilliant feud, and it ended literally with the end on the stage in big letters, and then she yeeted out of there. I mean, that's the most perfect poetic Hollywood ending possible, right? So, in that sense, it couldn't have worked out any better for her. I am not sure if it's a big loss for AEW, don't get me wrong, because she is brilliant, but I don't think it's a huge loss in the sense that it'll leave a huge gap in their women's roster because, as I mentioned, they've got a great women's roster and I think they'll cope just fine. So overall, I hope this is a win for both sides of the party. I don't want to say argument because it's not an argument as far as I'm concerned. Um, so I'll move on past that. Into Billy Gunn and Anthony Bowens. They had a little backstage segment. Someone said in our comment section that Anthony Bowens, like, he needs to break free from daddy ass and doing the scissoring thing. It still feels the same as when he was in the Acclaimed. I totally agree. I know he's trying to do the 5-tool player thing. That is so bloody lame. Like, I'm sorry. That is... What even is that? It's not catchy. It's not catchy. It's just really annoying. So yeah, I feel for Anthony Bowens. He's done nothing since breaking up the Acclaimed. I thought it could be quite big for him. But he talked about Pride Month, which was nice to get that little bit of representation on this show. And he challenged Kyle Fletcher to a match next week. So interesting. We will see about that. I don't really have any thoughts about that. I just think it's a bit of a mismatch. Lee Johnson versus Sammy Guevara, Lord help us, versus AR Fox versus Nick Wayne. By this point, I'm just feeling very fatigued from all the wrestling I've watched. It's not been like important wrestling in the sense of, you know, like a pay-per-view match is important, it's got stakes, it's got ramifications. A lot of these matches haven't, and I've got another one here that just doesn't feel like it has any ramifications. Yes, the Ring of Honor TV title is on the line, but know that Nick Wayne's going to win. I have absolutely no doubt in my mind that he's going to retain his championship, and I don't care about this championship, and I don't care about anyone in this match. To me, this was me just... I was tapping out for this one. I've not got a lot of notes on it because I just really struggled with it. I think the most entertaining thing about it was Ricochet being on commentary, and he was like saying that he's looking for teammates. He's looking out for people who will do what he says. So, you know, he's looking for a wet flannel, basically. Yeah. AR Fox was the standout in this match. He looked great. The crowd was really into him. They were chanting his name. Even he looked surprised about that. But in the end, Nick Wayne hit him with his finisher to pick up the win. So I just don't really have a lot to say about this. I'm sorry. I just really don't care about this match. So sorry. We're getting there. We're getting there. This feels like a long slog, and watching this was a long slog. So next up we had Telka in her first ever match, so her in-ring debut. So yeah, quite a lot of hype behind this, which is great. Love that. I feel like this is what I meant to mention Telka before. I feel like I didn't when I was talking about Ty Mello coming back. Yeah, we've just got this debut that is actually exciting and people actually do care about. So I think that Ty Mello is just gonna blend into the background. Talika, I don't think should blend into the background. I hope. You know, she looked great in this. Really cool entrance. Great gear. She's got a unique look, which, you know, fundamentally for a wrestler is important. She was facing off against someone called Lady Frost, who was, you know, she got a job at entrance. But surprisingly, this wasn't a straight up squash. Lady Frost got some shit in. She got, I just remember her getting like a super kick, which was quite surprising, because from the beginning it seemed like Telka was gonna just Tekla was gonna, you know, just completely beat her up. She was very aggressive from the get-go, and commentary really egged that on. But yeah, we got some offense from Lady Frost, so it wasn't like snappy quick like a squash, but it was essentially a squash. You know what I mean? You know what I mean. Um, she hit a really gnarly spear, which was awesome. Loved that. And her submission finishing maneuver, which is called the death trap, which was really cool. She looked technically very sound in this match, as well as very explosive. Yeah, pretty cool. I'm gonna say I just hope she doesn't get the Megan Bain treatment, which is come in, destroy everyone, then fade into the background. I'm gonna hold my judgment for now because I don't think we're going in that direction. I just think we have to be cautiously optimistic. So then she put her the death trap on again after the bell rang, wasn't letting her go, and then Queen Aminata came out to make the save, which was interesting. And then straight after that, she cut a backstage promo saying, blah blah blah. Do you know what we do to spiders in Africa? We squash them. I found her really endearing in this promo, to be fair, and I really like her as a wrestler. So I think I'm excited for this match. I think it'll be quite good, and hopefully we'll get a pretty good showing from both women. Maybe we'll get a bit longer for women's wrestling next week's 4-hour show, perhaps. Um, so yeah, and then Tony Schiavone had been saying, "Oh, Tony Khan's got a huge announcement," and it was what I talked about earlier, the OKADA versus um, Omega winner takes all match. So the contract signing for that is going to be next week. So that's fun. That's something to look forward to. I think there's a lot to look forward to next week, but then again, it's another 4-hour show, so it's just, there's going to be more filler, and there's going to be last minute things added, and I just hope that maybe they can learn from this time. And I understand you have to put something really good in the middle to keep the momentum going when it's a show like this. I understand that, but I just feel like, did we maybe peak too early here? I feel like we needed something bigger for the main event, which is what was up next. The Callis family versus the Paragon and Danny Garcia. Daddy Magic on commentary, as well as Don Callis again. He was putting a shift in tonight. I hope he got well paid. So we had a 4-man booth, which was interesting. I think it was a bit overwhelming, to be honest. Daddy Magic was totally outclassed on commentary by Don Callis, to be honest. I think it's probably difficult for Daddy Magic trying to be noticed when he's commentating alongside Don Callis. To be fair to him, that's probably a very difficult thing to do when Don Callis is so charismatic. He's so cocky. He's a heel. He's got so many things to say and he can quip anything. Whereas Daddy Magic is more just kind of like there for Danny Garcia and just cheering him on like a fan. He doesn't really have anything more to offer than that. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but he just totally didn't need to be there on commentary, essentially, is what I mean. But yeah, this match, again, I struggled with because compared to the other matches on the card, this match sucked. It wasn't a bad match, but I mean, that sounds so stupid, doesn't it? I've just said it sucked, but then in the same sentence said it wasn't bad. What I mean is, like, it wasn't terrible. It wasn't like they were making mistakes. It wasn't unwatchable. But when you compare it to the quality of the other matches on the card and the work rate of the other matches on the card, this really was nowhere near that. So to have that in this main event position, you really had high expectations for it, and it didn't meet them at all. You had Josh Alexander back to just blending in with the Callis family when, quite recently we were saying on his own, he works pretty well and he's a good wrestler. But in with the Callis family in these big tag matches, he just blends into the background. So I just don't understand what the purpose of this is. Like, is this going somewhere in the future? Is Fletcher going to win the TNT Championship? I mean, that fine, yeah. Take it away from Adam Cole, please, because he's not doing anything with it. That would be probably the best outcome from this. But we didn't have a Fletcher Cole match set up for the future out of this. We didn't really have anything coming out of this, to be perfectly honest with you. So it was a competitive match. The wrestling was sound, but I just feel like it didn't belong in this position. They were put in a tough spot at the end of a 4-hour event that has had so many big, unique matches, like first time matchups with like stars that we've not seen ever on TV or like, for a long time. So to come back to this, some very familiar faces who didn't really have a lot to offer, like new to bring to the table. It was rough. It was rough for them, and I didn't particularly enjoy it. Paragon ended up winning, interestingly, with Adam Cole getting the pin on Rocky Romero. So, when we've got RPG, Vice, and the Don Callis family, they can easily eat the pin, and I don't care. It doesn't really mean anything. You guys know what I mean. If am I articulating this properly? I'm not sure. I don't know if I'm being too pessimistic because I'm so fatigued from watching this. Maybe I am. Please do let me know in the comments what you thought of this show. Like, are you delighted? 4 hours, woo, great, give me more. Or are you a bit like me, just a bit like, oh, I need a rest. I need a rest from this. Or at least like more stuff to stick my teeth into. Stick my teeth into? That makes me sound like a vampire. Sink my teeth into. Something a bit more meaty. Something a bit more story driven. It's such a shame because there's a lot of really good stuff on this card. As I've said multiple times, the matches were really fun for the most part, but it was just too much, like, of the same formulas happening. We didn't have many one-on-one matches, did we? It was like they wanted to put as many people in as possible, lots of multi-man matches, lots of tag team matches. In that sense, it was quite overwhelming as well. So I just, like I said, I enjoyed the first half. I really did. And if we ended it there and it was a Dynamite, it would have got a pretty strong rating. I'm not going to knock this rating down like dead far. I'm not going to be harsh. I want to give it maybe a 7, maybe a 6.5. I've done a lot of complaining, haven't I? That's what happens when Estelle isn't here. I'm just bitching and moaning, baby. Just rename this to the Bitching and Moaning podcast. Nah. Joking. I'm joking. I think we're pretty positive on this podcast, actually, especially compared to some other podcasts. Like, we talk about AEW because we like it. For the most part, we think it's great, and if we criticize it, it's because we just want it to be better, and we try and be fair and balanced. I hope I've been fair and balanced. It's hard to judge when you're just talking to yourself, essentially. I think I'm going to settle on a 7. I'm going to settle on a 7. If you disagree, I don't care. No, I'm joking. If you disagree, drop me a comment or tweet me or message me, like whatever, Bluesky, X. You can find me at LucySimWright. Let me know what you thought of Fyter Fest. I feel like it was built up to be a huge event, which it just wasn't really. But that's just my opinion, and my opinion's not gospel, so I do want to know what everyone else thinks. If you haven't already, maybe you're new here, please do subscribe or follow if you're listening to Spotify. Also, leave a 5-star review. That is so important. And all the support or any feedback really does mean the world to Estelle and I. So I think you'll all be glad to know that Estelle will be back next week. So I'm sure we'll sort of address what we thought of this week briefly in that episode. And of course, we'll be back with the full review.
I must bid you adieu, goodbye, and good night, bye.
I wish you died in the womb!